very quickly, I'd like to start by introducing ourselves. So we have with us Emma, who is Senior Lecturer in Learning and Teaching in the School of Nursing, and Fiona, who is Lecturer in Children's Schools and Families and the Course Leader for Children, Young People and Families Apprenticeship, and myself, I'm a Senior Lecturer and Course Leader in the School of Community Health and Midwifery. And basically what I'm doing today is telling you a story of how 6 very unexperienced people came to become part of a research project. So we produced a paper called Hard Graft, Collaborative Exploration of Working Class Stories in Shaping Female Educator Identities. And we're drawn together from a variety of health and social care disciplines. And it's the 7 female educators in a post-1992 university. And our focus in our university is quite strong on widening participation. So we used a collaborative autoethnography approach, and we explored our values as educators and how they've been influenced by our working class upbringings. Thank you.
Okay, so as Amy says, we have completed this research project as it stands, but today we're not going to focus on the results of the research in depth, but instead we've chosen to reflect on the factors that were critical to the unexpected level of success of the project. They do actually really map quite well to the themes that emerged from the research, but I wanted to start with an experiment, if that's okay. So I'd like you all to just spend 30 seconds writing 3 of the values, your personal values that you hold most dear, in the chat. Okay, so as they all come through the chat during this session, I'm hoping that from the experiment we'll see just words, Jessica, individual words. We'll see some similarity and some difference between our values as a community for this presentation today. And that's where we started in this project. And it was, I saw a call for papers around working class academics, and really felt a visceral connection, personal connection to the topic. I thought it was speaking to me individually, but then I thought, actually, I'd really like to explore this, but I don't want to do it on my own. So I put out a call across our faculties to say, does anybody fancy working on this with me? And the results was this fantastic collaboration. So when we first got together, we talked about that each of us felt that call had personally spoken to us. So, for example, one of the people said it's one of the first times that they'd read a call for papers and felt like it was that personal voice, and that the editors really wanted to hear what they had to say. They didn't feel intimidated by the call, as is so often the case for these calls for papers. And we explored, so this research was all done during the midst of the pandemic, so we were doing everything online, via Teams meetings, via Padlets, via Teams chat spaces. And one of the things we started with was our level of poshness or not poshness. And one of the things that we started sharing was some elements of what makes us working class. Where does that come from? Are we still working class? And actually that initial conversation really started to create those safe spaces where we felt like we belonged. And then as we explored those individual reflections, so in between, the process of the method was a mixture of collaborative sharing and individual reflective activities. So as we went through those individual reflections and then went through the group sessions where we questioned each other and coached each other to dig a bit deeper, we noticed that whilst the stories had really clear similarities, there were also those unique threads, so individual turning points that shaped how we viewed the world slightly differently through the similarity of that upbringing as working class. And I think you can see from all the fantastic values we've got in the chat, there is definitely some similarity there, and then there is some uniqueness as well. Now, the results of the research resulted in 5 main themes, and you can see there the biggest word is graft, and that came up a lot in our conversations and our reflections. So we felt that these themes that emerged from the research, they really aligned with our shared values, but they manifested themselves in slightly different ways. So some of us might have felt an imposter and wanted to rebel against that, and some others might want to conform and put on a mask. But what really emerged from the project overall was this sense of community, belonging, and confidence that's born from those individual kind of starting point of the shared values. I'm going to hand over to Fiona.
Thank you, Emma. One of the strongest shared values that we collectively felt that we had was this need of authenticity and a need to be authentic. And through our group sessions, we disclosed to each other how we often felt we struggled to do this within academia. We felt that although we were no longer working class, we didn't yet fully view ourselves as academic, and we felt instead we fell somewhere in between. And we talked about this concept of the masks that we wear, which I think is a very powerful phrase, as it's relating to how we felt about being working class women in academia. From the clothes that academics are expected to wear, to the language used, the image to be portrayed, we found an agreement that this often conflicted with our feelings of authenticity. And sometimes we struggled to see where our place was in academia. Some of the team felt a lack of credibility or a sense of being an outsider because they didn't hold a doctorate. When we further explored the issue of academic belonging, each of us reflected individually on times when we either wore camouflage or masks in our attempts to assimilate within the university system. Quite a few members of our collaborative research group, we analysed our inner discourse around this feeling of authenticity within our roles and our unease that we felt sometimes as being labelled as an academic. And quite a few of us, in fact the majority of us, preferred to identify ourselves with our students through the term educator or a teacher or a previous professional status such as nurse. And I think this related back to that theme of graft, and we felt that was our way to establish our authenticity and our credibility. We also found that inaccessible academic language and processes often left us feeling excluded at times, particularly when it came to research. It was something that we all really wanted to do, but it felt like it was beyond our grasp. It was there for the doctors, the professors, the academics. It wasn't there for us educators. And we really found that coming together as part of this research project as a collective group of early researcher, working class female educators, it gave us a safe space. And it gave us a space where we could ask the silly questions we'd have been too embarrassed to admit to not knowing within a group of academics. This led to a lovely feeling of belonging within the research project and a new feeling of inclusion within academia that we'd not necessarily experienced before. Suddenly, the field of research didn't seem as scary, and we no longer felt like we had to necessarily slip on that mask in order to fit in when we were meeting as our group. And there's a quote there at the bottom of this slide: once you feel you are respected, you feel valued. This then helps you to reveal your hidden self. And we all felt that taking part in this collaborative early research project, it allowed us to explore and recognise how our traditional female working class values, how they fit within academia, And it gave us the opportunity to remove our masks and reveal our authentic hidden selves.
Obviously, thank you, Fiona. And building on from what Fiona said about being authentic, one of the barriers to being an authentic person is imposter syndrome. I've put the picture of Among Us on there in case any of you have got children, you know what that means, but I can relate to being the imposter on this game. Although I'm not quite as evil as offing people, I do feel like I've got a risk of being found out. So it was a regular common experience for all of us in the research project, and we did find having these individual spaces for reflection and collaborative dialogue in this safe space really helped us to reflect on this concept in depth, and it connected us through our shared values and our shared feeling of not belonging. What we found is that we're all capable of experiencing imposter syndrome, and it kind of manifests itself in different ways. So I just wanted to mention a couple of things that we observed so that you as professional researchers that might be supporting others in the same position as us can look out for. So we recognise that some of us may fear being found out, and that means that we might appear to be closed off. And it was really helpful for me when others that were more experienced shared their vulnerabilities and were a role model in that way, so it made it safe. Also, there's this concept of perfectionism. So you might spot it because people are procrastinating, taking a long time, or they might, like I did, do too much work. So it's helpful to have a kind of quantity approach and what's expected and making sure that's really, really clear. And also seeking out their expertise. There was an experience when we were part of the group where I knew something that others didn't, and it shocked me that I knew something that others didn't, but that made me feel a lot more confident as well.
So yeah, we just wanted to share that story really and leave you with this quote, which was how we felt by the end of exploring this research. And a couple of things that were really important when we reflected on this was the level of trust developed within the group to be able to expose those vulnerabilities to one another and also to the wider world through the paper, and the level of peer support, so looking holistically at who we are as individuals rather than the researcher part of us, the teacher part of us, the admin part of us, the mum, the wife, the whatever else we are. And ultimately we really celebrated the collective otherness through this project. Our challenge that we'd like to leave you with is how we find ways to celebrate that otherness and create belonging for the many invisible researchers we have across HE that aren't necessarily going through those big machines of postgraduate and postdoctoral research.